My name is Nadia Ose Mensa, and I am 31 years old. Last spring, my mother called me on a Sunday morning, first time in 7 years. I was standing at my kitchen counter making coffee, still in my socks when the name on my screen stopped me cold. I stared at it for 4 full rings. I did not pick up. She left a voicemail. Her voice was careful, warm in that particular way that people are warm when they want something, the kind of warmth that has been rehearsed in a mirror. Nadia, it is your mother. I think it is time we talked. I have been doing a lot of praying and a lot of thinking, and I believe God is calling our family back together. There are things I want to say. Please call me back when you can. I played it twice. Then I opened the folder. Not a binder, not a box, a folder, digital, pinned to the top of my Google Drive, named simply Documentation. Inside it, 214 files. Screenshots, forwarded messages, saved voicemails typed out word for word, emails printed to PDF, WhatsApp exchanges exported and dated. 7 years of evidence that my family had made a deliberate, sustained, coordinated choice to remove me from their lives. She wanted to talk about the future. She said God was calling our family back together. What she did not know was that a jury had called something else together first. 14 weeks before that Sunday morning phone call, a jury in Harris County, Texas, had awarded me and my co-plaintiff $2.3 million in damages in a wrongful termination case. My share, after legal fees and taxes, came to just over $890,000. The settlement had been reported, briefly, in 2 Houston business publications and 1 legal trade newsletter. Small coverage. The kind of thing that passes most people by, unless you're searching for someone's name. Before we get into this story, if you're new here, welcome to Still Waters Drama. I'm glad you found this channel. Please take a moment to like and subscribe if this kind of story speaks to you. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one. Every single one. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Because you need to understand where I came from before you can understand what came back. Kumasi, Ghana, then Tottenham, North London, then Houston, Texas. That is the short version of my family's migration story, and it is the geography that shaped everything that came after. My father, Emmanuel Ose, came to England in 1987 to study civil engineering at Northumbria University. He was 22, the eldest son of a Presbyterian deacon in Kumasi, a man who had saved for 11 years to send his firstborn to study abroad. My father understood that sacrifice. He wore it like a second skin. He graduated with honors. He married my mother, Grace, in a church ceremony in Tottenham, attended by 67 Ghanaian Presbyterians, and my mother's entire extended family from Accra. My mother wore white lace, and my father wore a kente sash over his suit, and the pastor spoke for 45 minutes, and nobody complained because that is how it was done. They had me in 1993. My brother Kwame 2 years later, my sister Abina 3 years after that. In 2001, when I was 8, my father was offered a position with a civil engineering firm in Houston, Texas. Good money, warm weather. The company would sponsor our visas. He took it. We landed at George Bush Intercontinental on a Tuesday in June with 4 suitcases and a cardboard box full of my mother's cookware because she did not trust American pots. Houston was a different kind of loud than London. Bigger sky, longer roads, the kind of city that does not apologize for itself. We settled in Sugarland, a suburb southwest of the city, into a neighborhood of mostly Indian, Nigerian, and Ghanaian families who had all done some version of the same thing, followed an opportunity to somewhere hotter and flatter than wherever they came from. We went to church every Sunday. Not a choice. A fact of life, the way gravity is a fact of life. My father served as an elder at Cornerstone Ghanaian Presbyterian Church of Houston, a congregation of about 300 people who had transplanted not just their bodies but their entire social and spiritual infrastructure from West Africa to the American South. The church was where my parents' friendships lived, where my mother's reputation lived, where the family's standing in the community was built. Week by week, potluck by potluck, choir practice by choir practice. I was a good daughter. I want to be clear about that. Not perfect, but good. I got grades my parents could brag about at church. I played piano in the youth worship band. I did not cause trouble. I did not stay out late. I volunteered at the church's food pantry every other Saturday from age 14 to age 18. I was the kind of firstborn daughter that Ghanaian Presbyterian parents in Sugar Land, Texas described to their own children as an example. Kwame was quieter, steadier. Abina was the entertainer, the one who could make my father laugh even when he was stern, which was often. I left for the University of Texas at Austin in 2011 on a partial academic scholarship. I was studying human resources management, which my father thought was soft and my mother thought was fine. I called home every Sunday at 7. I sent money when I could, which was not much. I visited for Christmas and Eid and, wait, I need to back up. My mother's family was Presbyterian. My father's family was Presbyterian. Cornerstone Church was Presbyterian. Everything in our lives was Presbyterian. That is the water we swam in, so entirely that I did not know there was any other water until I was 19 years old and met Tariq Salim Hassan in the library at UT Austin, third floor, International Law section, at 10:45 on a Tuesday night in October of my sophomore year. He was studying for an immigration law exam. I was studying for absolutely nothing because I had already finished my work and was just there because the library was quiet and my dormitory was not. He asked if I could pass him a highlighter. I passed him a highlighter. He said, "Thank you." I said, "You're welcome." He went back to his notes. I went back to my nothing. He asked me 20 minutes later what I was reading. I told him I was not reading. I was staring at a page and thinking about whether I had accidentally used too much oil in the rice I had made for dinner the previous evening. He laughed. He had a quiet laugh, the kind that happened on the inside first and only made it to the surface after a moment of deliberation, as if laughter was something he decided to let happen rather than something that happened to him. His name was Tariq. He was Pakistani American. His family was from Lahore. His parents had come to the US in the early 90s, and he had grown up in Dallas in a Muslim household that was, by his description, culturally devout rather than strictly religious. His mother prayed 5 times a day. His father ate halal and gave to the mosque, but was not a man who wore religion on the outside of his clothing. Tariq himself was somewhere in between, the kind of person who believed sincerely but held those beliefs as personal rather than declarative. He was also, and I say this not to make it the whole story, but because it was relevant to everything that followed Pakistani. Not Ghanaian, not Christian, not Presbyterian, not anything that Cornerstone Church of Houston would recognize as one of us. We dated for 6 months before I told my parents, not because I was ashamed, because I was 20 years old and I understood in the way that children of immigrant communities understand certain things before they are ever told them explicitly, that there would be a cost to this information and I was not yet ready to pay it. When I told my mother, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Does he pray?" I said, "Yes." She said, "To whom?" I said, "To God, Mom." He prays to God. She was quiet again. Then she said, "I need to tell your father." If you have ever watched a crack form in a wall, you know that it does not happen all at once. It starts as a hairline, so thin you almost cannot see it. You tell yourself it is nothing. The house is settling. Old buildings do this. It is not structural. That is what the first year felt like. My father did not explode. He was not that kind of man. Emmanuel Osei expressed disapproval the way he expressed everything else, with a kind of measured architectural precision. He did not yell. He asked questions, careful questions delivered in the tone of a man who had already determined the answers and was simply building the case. Has he converted? No. Has he expressed any interest in converting? That is not something I'm asking him to do. Has he met your pastor? No. Does he understand what you come from? He respects what I come from. That is not what I asked. The questions were not angry. They were procedural. My father was a civil engineer. He assessed load-bearing structures. And Tariq in his assessment was not a load-bearing element. My mother handled it differently. She prayed loudly, in my direction, whenever I called home. not for my happiness. For my return to right thinking, she organized a prayer group at church. I know this because Abina told me months later, half amused and half horrified. 12 women every Wednesday evening praying specifically that Nadia would come to her senses. 12 women every Wednesday for months. The community found out the way small, tight communities always find out. Through children talking, through someone saying something to someone else, through the careful information economy of a congregation that had known each other for 20 years. I became a topic. I know this because I have siblings, and siblings, no matter how loyal, cannot always help what they absorb and occasionally repeat. My mother started telling people we were taking a break, that I was busy with school, that she would pass along their greetings. She was managing the narrative, the way she managed everything, with precision and a certain kind of preemptive dignity. Tariq and I continued. We were good together in the way that two people are good together when they have found someone who makes the ordinary parts of life feel less ordinary. He made me laugh. He argued ideas with me like they mattered. He was the first person I had ever met who could sit in silence with me without it feeling like absence. By my senior year, we had moved into an apartment together near campus. I did not tell my parents. Abena knew, Kwame probably suspected. My parents, I think, chose not to know. I graduated in May of 2015 with a degree in human resources management and a job offer from a mid-sized logistics company in Houston, which meant I would be moving back to my parents' city. This required a conversation. The conversation happened at the kitchen table of my parents' home in Sugarland on a Saturday afternoon in June, with my mother's jollof rice cooling on the stove and my father's reading glasses folded on the table between us. I told them Tariq and I were serious. I told them I intended to keep seeing him. I told them I loved them, and I did not want this to be a division in our family, but I needed them to understand that this was my life and I was asking them to accept the person I had chosen to share it with. My father said, "We cannot accept this, Nadia. Not in the way you are asking." My mother said, "You are choosing him over your family. You are choosing him over God." I said, "I am not choosing anyone over God. I am choosing to love someone you have not even met." My father said, "We do not need to meet him to know what this means." What it meant in their framework was this. I was a firstborn daughter of a respected family in a tight-knit Ghanaian Presbyterian community. My marriage, when it came, was supposed to mean something to the community. It was supposed to reinforce the bonds that kept the community intact. A Muslim Pakistani man, however good, however kind, however intelligent, did not reinforce those bonds. He fractured them. I was not just making a personal choice. In their understanding, I was making a public statement about what the Osei family valued. And what I was saying by their reading was that I did not value what they had built. I drove back to Austin that night. I did not cry in the car. I waited until I got back to the apartment, walked in, found Tariq reading at the kitchen table, and sat down across from him. He looked up. He saw my face. He said, "How bad?" I said, "I think I need a minute." He said, "Okay." And he went back to his book, not to ignore me, but because he understood that some grief needs a minute before it needs company. That was 7 years ago. The formal estrangement did not happen in one letter, the way some stories go. It happened in increments, each increment small enough to deny, large enough to document. Month 1 after moving to Houston, I called home every Sunday. My mother picked up sometimes. My father almost never. When my mother did pick up, the conversations were brief. Church updates, weather, a new family at the congregation that my mother thought was very nice. Never my name and Tariq's name in the same sentence. Month 3, I invited them to a birthday dinner I was having with a small group of friends, including Tariq. My mother said she would have to see about my father's schedule. Neither of them came. No explanation offered, no apology. Month 5, my mother stopped picking up. Calls went to voicemail. I left messages. Careful messages. The kind where you know this might be the one she actually listens to. So you choose each word with the awareness that it might be the last one that lands. "Mom, it's Nadia. Just calling to say hello. Work is going well. I'm happy. I would love to hear your voice when you get a chance. She did not call back. Month 7, Abena texted me. Mom told the Asante family that you're going through a difficult phase. She said you are confused. I thought you should know. A difficult phase. 7 years of education, a professional career, a healthy relationship, a confused phase. I screenshot that text, saved it, named it Abinajan 2016 PNG, filed it in a folder I had created in Google Drive the week before, and named, without drama, documentation. This is the part of the story where I want to explain something about why I kept a folder, and not just a binder, not just a box, but a digital folder, sorted, time-stamped, backed up to the cloud every night automatically. I'm an HR professional. I spent my career for many years in environments where documentation was not bureaucracy. It was protection. The difference between she said and here's the date-stamped screenshot of exactly what she said is the difference between a complaint that gets dismissed and a complaint that gets heard. I filed documentation the way some people keep journals, not out of spite, not rehearsing revenge, but because the part of my brain that was trained to protect people in workplaces was also quietly protecting me. The folder was not a trap, it was a record. And records do not have opinions. They just tell the truth. Year 1 was the hardest. I want to be honest about that. You can know something is wrong and still grieve it. The two do not cancel each other out. Tariq's family was another story entirely. His mother, Farida, was a small woman with an enormous personality. The kind of person who decided she loved you and then set about making sure you knew it through practical acts of devotion. She learned how to make jollof rice from a YouTube video and served it at my first dinner at their home in Dallas, slightly overcooked but abundantly offered. His father, Nasir, shook my hand and then patted the back of it twice and said, "Any friend of Tariq's is family." They did not ask me what church I went to. They did not ask my parents' names and then look them up to see if they came from a recognized family. They made me tea and asked if I was warm enough and showed me photos of Tariq at age 7 with a bowl haircut so catastrophic it became an immediate bonding point. Farida called me Beta, an Urdu word for child, used as an endearment. She started calling me this approximately 3 weeks after we met and never stopped. That is what family looked like. I filed that in a different folder. Not documentation, memory. Year 2, Tariq and I moved into a house together in Midtown Houston. Nothing dramatic. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a neighbor named Gloria who grew tomatoes and occasionally left bags of them on our doorstep with a sticky note that said "Too many tomatoes." Please, we bought furniture. We adopted a cat named Procedures, which was Tariq's idea, a joke about his law school years that he refused to explain further, but found endlessly amusing. My father texted me once that year. One text, 6 words. "Your mother is not doing well." I called immediately. He picked up. My mother had a sinus infection. She was fine. He had not called to tell me she was fine. He had called because something in him needed to reach, and he did not know how to do it without a reason. I understood. I filed the impulse somewhere private and did not add it to the folder. Abina called more than anyone. She was the family's Switzerland. She loved me. She loved my parents. She navigated the space between us with the careful footwork of someone who had decided that maintaining both relationships was more important than taking sides. I did not ask her to choose. I was grateful she did not. Kwame was quieter. He sent occasional texts, usually in reaction to something I had posted on Instagram. A thumbs up, a fire emoji. Once after I posted a photo from a hiking trip Tariq and I took in the hill country. That looks peaceful. 3 words that managed to be both warm and completely non-committal. Classic Kwame. I sent my parents a card at Christmas that year, handmade from a small stationery shop in the Heights neighborhood. Inside I wrote, "I love you both. I hope the new year brings you peace. The door is open." The card did not come back. I do not know if they read it. I do not know if they threw it away. The uncertainty was in some ways worse than a return stamp. I made a note in the folder, not because it was evidence, because it happened and I needed somewhere to put it. Year 3. Tariq passed the Texas bar. We celebrated at a restaurant in Montrose with his parents, his cousin Bilal, and two of his law school classmates. Farida cried. Nasir made a speech that was ostensibly about Tariq but was mostly about Nasir's own immigration story and ended with a Rumi quote that made the whole table go quiet for a moment. Tariq squeezed my hand under the table. I called my parents to tell them, my mother answered. She said, "That is nice, Nadia." Then she asked if I had spoken to Pastor Akiampong recently. I said I had not. She said he had asked after me. I said that was kind of him. She said she had to go because she was making soup. We hung up. The call lasted 4 minutes and 11 seconds. I did not add it to the folder. But I sat with it for a while. That is nice, Nadia. 7 words about a man she had never met passing a bar examination after 3 years of law school. That is nice. By year 3, I had begun to understand something that took time to fully articulate. My parents were not simply disappointed in my choice. They were embarrassed by it. The community, the church, the social world they had built over 20 years was the thing they were protecting. My happiness was a consideration. Their standing was a conviction. I do not say this to condemn them. I say it because it changed how I understood the silence. It was not entirely about me. It was about the story they needed to be able to tell the people around them. And I did not fit in that story anymore. Year 4. We got married on a Saturday in April, not a courthouse, not a church, not a mosque. A garden ceremony at a venue in Wimberley, Texas, in the hill country, under an oak tree older than anyone present. We were married by a civil celebrant, a woman named Rosalind, who had a voice like warm wood and took our ceremony seriously as an act of meaning-making rather than legal paperwork. 62 guests. Tariq's entire extended family. It seemed from Dallas, from Houston, from New Jersey, from 2 people who had specifically flown in from Lahore. My friends from work, from college, from the neighborhood. Abina came. She stood on my side in a dusty rose dress and held my flowers when I needed my hands free, and did not mention our parents once, not because she was avoiding it, but because she had made a decision to be fully present, and she honored that decision completely. Kwame did not come. He sent a gift and a card. The card said, "I love you, Nadia. I'm sorry I cannot be there. Please know that I am happy for you." I believe him, even now. Kwame's absence was not contempt. It was the cost of being the son who stayed in the church and could not figure out how to also be the brother who showed up at his sister's interfaith wedding, without it becoming an event. My parents did not come. I had not expected them to, but expectation and hope are different things, and I had held somewhere small and quiet a hope. I let it go on the morning of the wedding, over coffee and pastries with Abina and Farida, in the suite at the venue, with sunlight coming through the white curtains and procedures the cat safely at home with our neighbor Gloria. Farida pinned a small gold pin to my dress. It was old, intricate, the kind of thing passed through a family over generations. She said, "This was my mother's. She would have loved you." She held both my hands and said something else, in Urdu that she did not translate, but that landed somewhere in me as warmth. I married Tariq Hassan on a Saturday in April under an oak tree in the Texas Hill Country. I wore a dress that was not entirely white, more ivory, with gold threading at the hem, a nod to both of us without belonging entirely to either. We wrote our own vows. His made me cry. Mine made him laugh, then cry, which was the plan. I did not cry from grief at that wedding. I want to say that clearly. The grief lived somewhere else, in a locked drawer, quiet. The ceremony itself was joy, genuine and uncomplicated joy, and I did not let the locked drawer open that day. The next morning, I added one item to the folder, a screenshot of the wedding invitation I had sent my parents, alongside the date I had sent it, and a note, "No RSVP received, no card, no call." File name, wedding invitation no response April 2019 PNG. Item 41. I need to stop here for a moment. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of something like this, if your family has gone quiet on you because of who you love or who you are or what you chose, I want you to know the quiet is not the verdict. It only feels like the verdict because you're inside it. Drop a comment. Tell me where you are in the story. I read every one, and if you have not subscribed yet, please do. It does not cost anything. It just tells the algorithm that this kind of story deserves to be heard. Year 5. Tariq joined a civil rights law firm downtown. Not the money job, the meaning job. He worked 60 hours a week on cases involving workplace discrimination, housing rights, immigration detention. He came home some nights carrying the weight of other people's impossible situations, and he set it down carefully. The way he did everything, with deliberation, and then he made tea and asked me about my day. I had moved by then from the logistics company to a director of human resources position at a regional healthcare network. Larger organization, more complex problems. The kind of job where you spent your days navigating the intersection of people and policy and trying to find the place where both could be served with dignity. I was good at it. I want to say that without false modesty, I was very good at it. I was the person in the room who could de-escalate without dismissing, who could hold two contradictory truths at once and find the path between them. Years of being the person in my family who tried to build bridges had turned out to be professionally extremely useful. My mother called once that year, unprompted, no occasion, a Thursday evening in September. I picked up on the second ring, surprised enough that I had not prepared anything to say. She asked how I was. I said fine. She said she had been thinking about me. I said I thought about her too. She said she had been praying. I said I was glad. She said she hoped I was eating well. I said I was. She said okay. She said she had to go. She said she loved me, quickly, as if she was not sure she was allowed to say it or whether I would receive it. I said, I love you too, Mom. She hung up. I sat in the kitchen for 10 minutes after that call. Tariq came in, found me sitting there, sat down without asking, poured us both water. We did not talk. After a while, I said, my mom called. He said, I know. I heard. I said, she said she loved me. He said, she does. She just doesn't know what to do with it. I did not add that call to the folder. Some things deserve a different kind of keeping. Year 6. My father was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Abina called to tell me. She was matter-of-fact about it. The way Abina was matter-of-fact about difficult things, as if delivering information clearly was its own act of love. She said he was managing it. She said he was on medication and had adjusted his diet, and that my mother was, as she put it, extremely involved in enforcing the diet, possibly to a degree that was creating its own stress. I laughed. Abina laughed. Then she said, you should know, Nadia. And I understood. She was not asking me to call. She was just making sure I had the information, and what I did with it was up to me. I called my father that weekend. He picked up on the third ring. He sounded the same, careful and measured, though perhaps a little slower. He did not say he was glad I called. He said, Nadia, just my name. The way a man says a name when the name alone is a whole sentence. We talked for 11 minutes, about his health, about his engineering firm, where he still consulted 2 days a week, about a bridge project in Sugarland he was advising on, about nothing, in the way that families who have lost the habit of talking talk, circling the edges of what matters and landing nowhere near it. Before we hung up, I said, Dad, I'm glad you're okay. He said, yes, just that. I said, I love you. He said, take care, Nadia. He had not said I love you back since I told him about Tariq. I noticed the absence the way you notice a missing step in a staircase, the lurch of expecting something that is not there. I did not add the call to the folder. I added a note to the folder. Called Dad. He did not say I love you. He said, take care. I did not know why I needed to write it down, only that I did. Now I need to tell you about the job. In 2022, I was the director of HR at Meridian Health Partners, a regional healthcare network with about 2,400 employees across 8 facilities in the Houston metro area. My supervisor was the chief people officer, a man named Greg Hollander, mid-50s, Texan by disposition and by birth, the kind of manager who used the phrase culture fit the way other people used it as a disguise for something else. I want to be precise about what happened, because precision matters, and because I have 214 files in a folder that were, in the end, the reason I won. For 2 years, I was passed over for promotions I was objectively more qualified for than the candidates selected. I raised this, formally and in writing, in November of 2022. I documented disparities in how performance reviews were conducted for myself and for comparably situated colleagues. I raised concerns about specific comments made in executive meetings that I had taken notes on in real time. Time-stamped, typed into a running document I maintained every single day on my work laptop. In February of 2023, I was terminated. The stated reason was a restructuring. My position was, they said, being eliminated. The position was relisted under a different title, with marginally different responsibilities 6 weeks later. I called Tariq from the parking lot. He listened to the whole thing. Then he said, "Okay, don't say anything to anyone else tonight. I'm gonna make some calls." He was a civil rights attorney. He knew exactly who to call. I want to be clear. I did not want to sue. Litigation is not a life plan. It is expensive and exhausting, and you spend 2 years having your professional judgment questioned by people whose job it is to question your professional judgment. But I also had 2 years of documentation, contemporaneous notes, dated emails, performance reviews that told a story, a running log of every meeting, every comment, every moment where something felt wrong, and I had written it down because I was an HR professional, and I knew that the day you need the documentation is never the day it is convenient to start keeping it. We filed suit in January of 2024. My co-plaintiff was a colleague of mine, a Black woman named Denise Moreau, who had her own set of documentation and her own file of things that had happened over the years, and who had independently, and for her own reasons, also been keeping receipts. The case took 14 months. I will not walk you through all of it. What I will tell you is that the documentation was decisive. Not the only thing, but decisive. When the opposing counsel tried to argue that the termination was performance-based, our team was able to produce a written record so thorough, so organized, so relentlessly dated and sourced, that the narrative had nowhere to go. In March of 2025, the jury returned a verdict: $223 million in damages, split between myself and Denise. After fees, after taxes, my portion was just under $890,000. The verdict was reported in 2 Houston legal publications and 1 regional business news outlet, a total maybe of 400 words across all 3 articles. My name was mentioned in each one. You already know what happened next. My mother's voicemail arrived on a Sunday morning. I played it twice. God is calling our family back together. 2 days later, my father texted, "Nadia, I saw the news. I'm proud of you. Please call when you can." The 3rd time in 7 years that a word resembling proud had appeared in our communication. 3 days after that, Kwame called. He was warm, genuine, the most like himself he had been in years. He asked about the case, the details, what happened, how I was feeling. He said, "You always did have the receipts." He laughed. I laughed. It felt like him. Then he said, "Mom wants to visit." I was quiet. He said she is talking about flying out to Houston. "She wants to sit down with you. She says she has a lot to say." I said, "I bet she does." He said, "Nadia, a warning?" Gentle. I said, "I know, Kwame. I know." Then something happened that I did not expect. A WhatsApp message arrived from a number I recognized as belonging to Auntie Ya, my mother's older sister, who lived in Maryland and who I had not spoken to directly in 4 years, though she had occasionally been the source of information that made its way to me through Abina. The message was a screenshot of a WhatsApp group I had not known existed. A group called, in our family's habit of naming group chats with church-adjacent formality, Ose Family Future. Auntie Ya had been added to this group. I would later learn by accident. The same way accidental group chat additions always happen. Someone adds a name from a contact list without verifying number and gets more than they bargained for. She sent me the screenshots without comment, just the images, no text above them. I opened them in my kitchen, standing at the counter, coffee in hand. Tuesday morning, 8:47 a.m. 7 screenshots, 3 days of conversation. My mother, I have been reading about the case. This is a significant amount of money. We need to think about how to approach this as a family. My father, yes, the matter is serious. Kwame, how do we want to approach it? My mother, I'm going to go to Houston. We need to have a proper conversation in person about the family home, about your father's medical expenses, about our retirement. These are things that families manage together. Paige, we need to present a clear picture, not make it seem like a request. Make it family responsibility. That name, Paige, was Kwame's wife. I had met her once at a church event before the estrangement. She was precise and efficient, the kind of person who organized her spice rack alphabetically and tracked everything. My mother. Exactly. She has always understood responsibility. That is how her father raised her. Kwame, should we involve Abina? My mother, Abina will complicate it. She is too soft about Nadia. We do not need soft right now. My father, I think we need to be careful. Nadia is not someone who responds well to pressure. My mother, Emmanuel, she is our daughter. She is not going to refuse her own parents. My father, I am saying we should be thoughtful. My mother, I am always thoughtful. That is why I'm going to go in person, with a clear list of what the family needs. She is practical. She will understand numbers. Kwame, how much are we thinking? My mother, your father's medical bills, the church loan, the house repairs, Abina's school fees, add it up properly, and we will go from there. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after I read that. The church loan, the house repairs, Abina's school fees, 7 years of silence, 7 years of returned affection and unanswered calls, and a wedding I attended without my parents, and a marriage they had refused to acknowledge, and a life they had decided I was living wrong. And now, she will understand numbers. I set my coffee down. I opened my laptop. I opened Google Drive. I opened documentation. And I added 7 screenshots, item 208 through item 214. Then I texted Abina, "Did you know about the Osei family future group chat?" Abina replied in 4 minutes. What group chat? I sent her Auntie Ya's screenshots, 3 minutes of silence. Then, oh, Nadia, then I'm so sorry. I did not know then. Abina will complicate it. Then I cannot believe she said that. I said, I can. I told Tariq that night. He was in the kitchen making dinner, listening with his back half turned while he stirred something on the stove. When I finished, he turned the heat to low and turned around fully. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I do not know yet, but I want to be ready." He said, "Okay." He turned back to the stove, turned the heat back up, said without looking at me, "You have spent 7 years being ready for exactly this. You will know what to do when she gets here." My mother arrived on a Friday afternoon. She came from Sugarland. She took an Uber to Midtown and rang the doorbell at 2:17 in the afternoon on a Friday in April, 7 years and 11 months after she had told me I was choosing a man over my family. She looked older. Not fragile. She was not a fragile woman, but the kind of older that shows up in the hands and the corners of the eyes and the way a person carries themselves when the certainty that once held them upright has started, in some places, to quietly shift. She wore a navy blue blouse and sensible trousers and the pearl earrings she wore to church every Sunday. She had a handbag and a folder. A manila folder held against her body with one arm. I noticed the folder immediately. "Nadia, Mom, come in." I led her to the kitchen. This was a decision. The kitchen was where we lived, not for company, but for truth. The living room was for visitors. The kitchen was for things that actually needed to happen. She looked around. She looked at the photos on the refrigerator. Tariq and me on a hiking trail. Procedures the cat in a sunbeam. A photo of Farida and Nasir and the two of us at their anniversary dinner last year. All of us laughing at something Nasir had said. A child's drawing, actually a piece of art, a colleague's daughter had made for me, and which I had put on the fridge because it was joyful. My mother's eyes moved over all of it. They rested briefly on Farida's face. Something crossed her face. I did not name it yet. I poured 2 glasses of water. No tea. Tea was for people who were staying. She sat. She set the folder on the table. She folded her hands on top of it. I'm glad you agreed to see me. You are my mother. Yes. She paused. There are things I need to talk to you about the family, about what we need. She opened the folder. A list. Handwritten, blue ink, precise as a ledger. Medical expenses, my father's diabetes management and upcoming procedures. $48,000. Church building fund contribution in the family's name. $25,000. Home repairs, roof and foundation, Sugarland House. $67,000. Abina's postgraduate tuition, she was applying to a program in Toronto. $42,000. Monthly family support, ongoing, $2,500. Total, $184,000, plus $2,500 per month ongoing. She read each item aloud. She did not look at me while she read. She looked at the list. When she finished, she set the list on the table between us and looked up. This is what the family needs, Nadia. Your father has worked his whole life. I have given everything to this family. It is right that you help. It is what a good daughter does. I looked at the list. I looked at the number at the bottom. I looked at her face, which was doing what my mother's face did when she had rehearsed a conversation, and it was going according to plan. A particular stillness, a kind of preemptive confidence. I said, "One moment." I got up. I walked to the small office off the hallway. The room I used for work when I was remote. On my desk, my laptop sat open. I opened Google Drive, I opened documentation, I opened the folder. Not on the screen. I did not want to show her a screen. Screens can be dismissed. They are too easy to look away from. I had printed it. The previous evening, after Tariq had gone to sleep, I had sat in this office for an hour and selected from 214 files, the ones that told the story most clearly. The returned affection. The managed silence. The community whisper campaign. The wedding I attended without my parents. The screenshots of the group chat. 52 pages printed, organized in chronological order. Paper clipped by year. I carried the stack back to the kitchen, set it on the table to the right of her list. 2 documents. Hers, mine. She looked at the stack of papers. What is that? I sat down. I placed my hands on the table, flat. I looked at her. You brought a list of what you need. I brought a record of what happened. I think we should go through mine first, since it came first. Her expression did not change, but something behind it shifted. The way weather shifts before rain, not visible yet, but present. I took the first page from the top of the stack. This is a screenshot of a text Abena sent me in January of 2016. You told our family friends that I was going through a difficult phase. A confused phase. I had just moved back to Houston with a degree, a career, and a serious relationship. I was not confused. I set it on the table. This is a screenshot of a Facebook post from your church's women's group, February 2016. The caption mentions a Wednesday prayer group for a family member who has, quote, lost her way. Abina told me later this was for me. I set it on the table. This is a message forwarded to me in April 2016 by a mutual friend. You told Mrs. Asante Boafo that I was going through a phase and would come back to the community when I came to my senses. She opened her mouth. I continued. This is a screenshot of the WhatsApp message you sent to the church women's group in 2017, asking them to pray for Nadia, not for my health, not for my safety, for me to, quote, return to the right path. I was 33 years old, Mom. I was not lost. I was married. How did you get? I was in the group. You forgot I was in the group. I had been added by Sister Akua 2 years before. You forgot to remove me. She was quiet. This is the wedding invitation I sent you and Dad. April 2019. This is a note I wrote the day after the wedding recording that no RSVP was received. No call, no card, no acknowledgement. I paused. I want you to know that Farida Hassan pinned her mother's brooch to my dress that morning. She said her mother would have loved me. Tariq's mother said that to me on my wedding day because my mother was not there to say anything. My mother's jaw tightened. She pressed her lips together. I moved through the years, methodically, not performing, not raising my voice. The way you present evidence in a hearing, the way I had learned to present documentation in an HR investigation. Clearly, in order, without editorializing, because the documents editorialize themselves. Year 3, the calls I made that went unanswered, the voicemails I left, the careful chosen words. Year 4, the wedding, Abina standing in for a family that had decided not to show up. Year 5, a screenshot of a message Kwame's wife Paige had sent to a mutual acquaintance, which that acquaintance had forwarded to me without comment. Nadia made her choices. You cannot expect the family to follow her into it. I read it aloud. I set it on the table. Year 6, my father's diabetes. The 11-minute phone call where he did not say I love you. Year 7, a screenshot from the Osei Family Future group chat. My mother's words. She will understand numbers. I set it on the table. I looked at her. You're right, Mom. I do understand numbers. I have always understood numbers. So let me tell you what I see when I look at your list and then at mine. I tapped my stack of papers. 52 documents. 7 years. Documented evidence that this family made a deliberate, organized, sustained choice to manage me out of your lives because I married a man who did not come from the community you wanted me to come from. I tapped her list. 1 page, 5 line items. No apology, no acknowledgement, no mention of my husband's name, no mention of the 7 years. She said, Nadia, we are your parents. You gave me everything I needed to become the person I am. And then you removed me from your family because of who I chose to love. And now you're sitting in my kitchen with a list of what you need, and you have not said the word sorry once. The kitchen was quiet. Through the window, I could hear the neighbors' wind chimes. The cat Procedures appeared from somewhere and sat in the doorway, watching with the impartial judgment of a cat. I was not wrong, she said. It was quieter than I expected. Less certain. About what? About who you married. A Muslim man? We did not know him. We did not know his family. We did not know what he believed or how he would treat you or what kind of life. You could have found out, I said. He has been in my life for 11 years. You have met him once. Briefly. At a church event you did not know he would be at. You have never sat across a table from him. You have never had a meal with him. You have never asked him a single question. You decided what he was before you knew who he was. He is not Christian. He is kind, he is honest, he has never once asked me to be less than I am. He drove me to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when I had appendicitis in 2021 and sat in the waiting room for 4 hours because they would not let him in. And then he was there when I came. Out of surgery with a coffee and a bag of my things he had packed from home because he thought of it. That is who he is. I paused. Where were you? She had no answer. I could see her looking for one. Her eyes moved across the table, across the papers, across her own list, looking for the argument that would rearrange what I had said into something she could push back against. She did not find it. I reached for one specific page near the bottom of the stack. I had put it there deliberately. The last document, the most recent. This is the group chat, the one called Osei Family Future. This is the message you sent 3 days after my settlement was reported. I read it aloud, her own words. She will understand numbers. Her face changed. The rehearsed calm cracked, just for a moment, and underneath it was something I recognized from childhood. The expression my mother wore when she had been caught and was deciding whether to acknowledge it or reframe it. She chose to reframe. That was a private conversation. Yes, so were my voicemails. So was my wedding. So were the 7 years during which you told your church community that I was confused and lost and going through a phase. The garage door. I heard it before the door opened. Tariq came in through the side entrance. He was in work clothes, jacket over his arm, laptop bag. He saw my mother at the table. He saw the papers between us. He looked at me. He crossed the kitchen, set his bag on the counter, walked to where I was sitting. and placed his hand on my shoulder. He sat down next to me. He looked at my mother. He said, "Hello, Grace," quietly, without hostility. Just a man acknowledging a woman he had never properly met and who had never properly tried to meet him. My mother looked at his hand on my shoulder. She looked at his face. She looked at him the way I think she had been afraid to look for 11 years, because looking meant confronting something she had made a decision about before she had the information to make it. He was not what she had decided he was. She looked at him for a long time. Then she looked away. I spoke. "Mom, here's where we are." I moved my papers to one side. "I'm not going to give you money. Not because I cannot, because the moment I do, the 7 years become a financial transaction. They become something you managed and then resolved by waiting until the numbers were right. I will not let that be the story." She said, "Nadia, I am not finished." She stopped. "If you want to know my husband, you can know him. He is sitting right here. He will answer any question you have ever wanted to ask and have never asked. If you want to support Abina's education, I will match what you contribute, dollar for dollar, because she stayed and she loved me and she deserves that support. If Dad needs medical help, I want to know. Not through a list, through a phone call. From him to me." I looked at her, but none of that starts with money. It starts with the word sorry, and not sorry that time has passed. Not sorry that things got complicated. Sorry that you returned my calls and my cards and my wedding invitation and my attempts to include you in my life, because you decided before you knew him that my husband was not worthy of being in your family. The kitchen was very quiet. She looked at the papers, at the stack of 7 years of documentation, at her own list still sitting to the left. She pressed her hand to her mouth. And then she did something I had not seen her do since I was 11 years old and her father died in Accra and she could not fly home in time. She cried, not the controlled, theatrical version, the real kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and arrives without permission. She did not speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was different, smaller. "I was afraid," she said, "that you would disappear into his world, that we would lose you entirely, that you would become someone we did not recognize." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, and then I was too proud to admit that the way I responded was wrong, because admitting it meant admitting I had wasted. She stopped. "7 years," I said. "Yes, you did." I said, "I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but the next 7 don't have to go the same way." She looked at Tariq, really looked at him for what I believe was the first time. He said, "Would you like some tea, Grace?" She stared at him. Then she said very quietly, "Yes, thank you." She stayed for 2 hours. I will not tell you it was resolved in those 2 hours, because nothing that takes 7 years to break takes 2 hours to mend. But something shifted. She asked Tariq questions, real ones about his work, about his family. He showed her a photo of Farida and Nasir. She looked at Farida's face for a long time. She said, "She looks kind." Tariq said, "She is." Before she left, she stood in the front hallway for a moment and looked at me. She said, "I'm sorry, Nadia. I know that is not enough, but I'm saying it." I said, "I know. I did not say it is fine. It was not fine. I did not say it does not matter. It does." I said, "I know because I know, and because knowing is where things begin." She left. Tariq closed the door. He stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, chin resting on the top of my head. I said, "That was not what I expected." He said, "What did you expect?" I said, "I don't know. Something harder." He said, "She's your mother. She came because she wanted money. She stayed because she's your mother." 2 weeks later, my father called. Not a text. A call, a Saturday morning, 9:11 a.m. He said, "Your mother told me what happened. She told me everything." He paused. I want to say something I should have said a long time ago. He was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that is not emptiness but fullness. A man finding the words he has been looking for longer than the pause suggests. I was a coward, Nadia. That is the honest word. I'm a man who believes in doing what is right, and I did not do what was right with you. I let your mother make decisions I should have questioned, and I told myself I was keeping peace, and I was not. I was keeping my own comfort. Another pause. I'm sorry, I love you. I love you. And I have always loved you, and I'm sorry that I let so much time pass without saying it. I was quiet for 17 seconds. I counted. I said, "Thank you, Dad." I needed to hear that. He said, "I know. I should have said it sooner." He cleared his throat. "Your husband. Tell me about his work." So I told him. I told him about Tariq's firm, about the cases, about the way he described his work as trying to use the law to do what the law was supposed to do in the first place. My father listened. He asked 2 questions, careful, measured questions, the questions of a man genuinely trying to understand something rather than assess it. At the end of the call, he said, "I would like to meet him. When you are ready. On your terms." I said, "We will make it happen." He said, "Thank you, Nadia." He said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too, Dad." We hung up. I sat in the kitchen for a while. Procedures, the cat came and sat on my feet, which he did when the house was quiet, and he felt the need to provide ballast. I opened Google Drive. I opened documentation. I did not add anything. I looked at it for a moment. 214 files. 7 years. Then I created a new folder, named it after, left it empty, ready. Kwame called the following week. He was less rehearsed than usual. He said, "Mom told me you showed her the folder." I said I had. He said, "How bad was it?" I said it was the truth. He was quiet. Then he said, "I should have been there. The wedding, I should have been there, Nadia." I said, "Yes, you should have." He did not ask for forgiveness immediately, which I respected. He just sat with it. Then he said, "I know I cannot undo it, but I want to do better going forward, if you'll let me." I said I would think about it. I meant that honestly. Some debts take time to repay, and the repayment has to be in actions, not in a phone call. Paige sent a message. 1 line, indirect, the digital equivalent of a look across a room. Kwame says the conversation went well. I did not reply. Some messages are complete as they are. Abina called the same night Kwame did, separately without coordination, at 11 p.m. Houston time, when she knew I would still be awake. She said, "I heard." I said, "I know," she said. "I am proud of you." I said, "Mom called me confused for 3 years." She said, "I know." She was wrong. I said, "Yes." She said she knows that now. I said, "Yes." She said, "Does it help?" I thought about it. I said, "Some." Not entirely, but some. Abena said, "That is enough for now." I said, "Yes, it is." Here's what 7 years of documentation taught me. It is not enough to feel wronged. The world is full of people who feel wronged and have nothing to show for it. Feelings are real, but feelings alone are not evidence. Evidence is what you do with the feeling, when the feeling is legitimate. Evidence is the screenshot you take at 8:47 in the morning when your hands are shaking and your coffee is going cold and you know that someday someone will ask you what happened and you will need to be able to answer with something more than your word against theirs. It taught me that love and accountability are not opposites. My mother loves me. She has always loved me. She also caused real harm, sustained harm, documented harm, and no amount of love cancels the documentation. Both things are true. You can receive an apology and still show someone the record. You can forgive and still let the record stand. Forgiveness is not amnesia. It is a choice you make with your eyes open. It taught me that the people who show up when the numbers change are not automatically wrong to show up. Sometimes people who have lost their way find it again through the door that shame forces open. My mother came because of a settlement, but she cried because of something older than money. She stayed because she is my mother. The reasons people arrive are not always the reasons they stay. And it taught me this. The most important thing, the folder was never about them. It was about me. It was the record I kept so that I could not gaslight myself. So that when the voice in my head said maybe you overreacted, maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe you're being too hard on them. I could open the folder and say, here, this is what happened. This is the date. This is the message. This is the year. This is what it cost. You cannot move forward, honestly, without knowing clearly what you're moving from. I have 214 files in the documentation folder. I have 0 files in the after folder so far. I intend to keep it that way for as long as possible. That is my story. 7 years, 214 screenshots, 1 lawsuit, 1 conversation at a kitchen table, 1 mother who came for the wrong reasons and stayed for the right ones. If this story found you at the right moment, if you have been keeping your own quiet record of things that were done, and things that were said, and things that were taken from you without your permission, I want you to know your receipts are not bitterness. They are not resentment. They are the truth, organized, and the truth is always allowed to speak. Drop a comment. Tell me where you are in your story. Tell me if someone came back when the numbers changed. Tell me if you let them in or kept the door closed and how you knew which one was right. Subscribe if you have not yet. Share this with someone who is in the middle of something like this and needs to hear that the folder is allowed. The documentation is allowed. The quiet record is allowed. Still waters run deep. I will see you in the next one.